fabricated culture wars inflicting casualties on our most precious population, our children. We're now short a Secretary of Education, schools are missing grant money, teachers are leaving in droves, and you're not doing your job. You make videos in a official capacity ranting in your car like a child crying to his mom about a boogeyman that you and Moms for Liberty created. And speaking of Moms for Liberty, guess what? There is a nifty policy in parental school handbooks called parental opt-out. Read your parent handbook.
This is such a great comment from an Oklahoma school board meeting, and that state and its education policies have been in turmoil for the past few months, and here's why. All of this started when Oklahoma Secretary of Education Ryan Walters refused to condemn racism as the force behind the, get this, Tulsa race massacre. Instead, he tried to tie that violence to individual moral wrongdoing rather than systemic racist attitudes in Oklahoma in the 1920s. And just to refresh, the Tulsa race massacre was a tragic rampage by white mobs who killed as many as 300 black residents, burned 1,600 homes, and destroyed countless businesses in what was known as Black Wall Street. But according to Walters, race was definitely not a factor, saying that, quote, let's not tie it to the skin color and say the skin color determined that. Well, since 2002, Oklahoma has literally been required by law to teach that true history of the race riot, and now Walters is holding two schools' accreditation hostage for what he calls the, quote, severity of the district's issues on what he sees as CRT getting out of control. And of course, who are the only people that this hurts? Students. What's even crazier about this story is that just 3 years ago, Walters was teaching AP US history, and remote classes of his were posted on YouTube during the pandemic. And they reveal that he, get this, understood that racism was a big deal in Oklahoma and across the US, and championed the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr., and railed against school segregation, ultimately championing the result in Brown versus Board of Education. So just 3 years ago, Ryan Walters was an informed, empathetic, intelligent US history teacher, but what happened once he was appointed Secretary of Education? Did he read a ton of research by right-wing philosophers bashing Marcuse, who is thought to have invented CRT, and thoughtfully debated his thinkings and spent time reflecting on how the American education system might be failing the youth? Of course not. He realized that he could get way more power and a friendship with Donald Trump if he spouted right-wing nonsense.
A true state superintendent wouldn't be using their office to catapult them into political stardom. They would work diligently, efficiently, humbly, and with integrity to make sure all children in Oklahoma, regardless of race, religion, cultural background, sexual orientation, or gender identity, receive a well-rounded education in a safe and inclusive environment. I am pleading with you as a parent and as an Oklahoman, stop the insanity, step aside, and let someone who cares more for our children than their political aspirations take your place.
There is an incredible Daily Beast article that details his rapid fall from grace, including how he claimed kitty litters were being installed in Oklahoma schools for kids who identified as cats. The reporting says that, quote, after he was elected, Walters began speaking like someone who aspired to even higher office. A once seemingly reasonable high school history teacher issued an official statement that posited that the arrest of former President Trump for withholding classified documents was, quote, the most profound unwinding of the US Constitution that our country has ever experienced since the Civil War. I wonder if this former history teacher has ever maybe heard the famous quote that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and if not, he may want to crack open that book, or literally any book, to reflect on how he has gotten so corrupt so quickly.
John, walk with me, please. Walk with me, John. Now! Hey, John, please don't resist. You guys, this is an unlawful arrest. I have a First Amendment right.
Listen, you do, right? But
You're right. Okay, thank you. Here's someone speaking rationally.
Listen to me. At this point, the meeting is over, right?
It's not over.
It's
not over. We were meeting.
If you
This man right here, a John Tiggs, was one of two people arrested at a school board meeting in Loudoun County, Virginia, that turned from a meeting to a circus. Hi, I'm Miranda Scholl with The Breakdown, and let's talk about what's happening to the state of our educational systems in America. A group of 200 parents protesting the teaching of critical race theory and the school's support of transgender students showed up at a Loudoun County school board meeting in Ashburn, Virginia, led mostly by a man named Scott Mineo, the founder of the Parents Against Critical Race Theory.
Critical race theory is culturally responsive framework, culturally responsive teaching. It's all just Trojan horses. Inequity and diversity.
We hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes.
The group gathered outside, giving speeches and singing patriotic songs and holding signs that read "Education, not indoctrination," before heading into the board meeting, where they continued to be incredibly disruptive. The event got so raucous and so out of hand, with the parent protesters ignoring the board's denial of teaching critical race theory, that the meeting was ended and the police were called on anyone who refused to leave, booking them on trespassing. This isn't an isolated scenario. This is an echo of what is happening all across our country. People protesting what they think is some new woke agenda. Critical race theory isn't new. Teaching the truth of how this country was founded and how systems prevail that oppress people is not new. The phrase critical race theory is new, but the actual content, the actual history is not new. And I fear to think the direction that our educational system is heading if we conveniently keep banning the truth from being taught.
Nope, can't teach that, can't teach that, can't teach that, can't teach that. Ooh, maybe, nope, I can't teach that. Makes America look bad, so I gotta skip it. Redacted, can't learn that. Yes, write us in. Why don't you just teach us what actually happened in history? Ask your parents. Your mom for sure will know.
They're so afraid of indoctrination, but that's what they're doing. That is exactly what they're doing.
To say it's intrusive is an understatement. They're talking about mobilizing literature, thousands of participants in a grand scheme to have every student, faculty member, and administrator psychoanalyze each other in an effort to curtail suicides. I agree with those who say the program is insane and would create far more stress and anxiety than it could ever pretend to relieve. Teachers and administrators do not have the education, and children and adolescents are simply not emotionally equipped to participate. See the Salem witch trials.
School board meetings across this country are now becoming a drinking game and a national embarrassment. You begin to lose track of how many times the ghouls that infiltrate these boards invoke things like persecution and predatory teachers. Before you know it, you're too wasted to pay any more attention to the substance. The nonsense you just heard from that school board member, Darby Bodie, about teachers and administrators clinically persecuting students that they think are suicidal, like they're exactly like the religious bigots who held the Salem witch trials, is quite a stretch. She's referring to an international suicide prevention program called Hope Squad that's used in over 1,600 schools and is centered around training peers and adult community members like teachers, community leaders, and parents to do such awful things like educating students on how to recognize suicide warning signs and report things in a respectful way, or training students how to support their fellow students who might be struggling, or making the environment more inclusive and building social emotional learning skills together. Any kind of mentorship or support of students by teachers or non-parents is now predatory behavior in the 2020s, and this board member ain't done with her rant.
This is nothing more than a blatant and shamelessly put together scam to further separate parents from their children and fund another all-powerful association of profiteering nonprofits to leech onto the coffers of the district and further the progressive power grab for our children. Prevention teams in every building, approved training, approved credentials, approved research, when your child should seek help and why, who to reach out to, how to make contact, anonymous reporting. And nowhere in this Save Student Act, nowhere does it say call your mother. Nowhere does it say call your father. Nowhere does it say call home. To really understand what this is all about, that tells you everything. The encroachment into parenting is pure evil, and we need to put it to an end. It is comparable to the Nazi handbook and a tactic of the communists. It is absolutely evil. There is barely enough time in a day to comprehensively teach reading, writing, science, history, arithmetic, and critical thinking, which I might add we are not doing the greatest job of. Yet this stuff is what gets shoved down our throats on a regular basis. The psychological analysis of children is the job of the parents and their private professionals.
All right, that's 2 more shots for double whammy, Nazism and communism being invoked without knowing what they actually mean. Give me it. Thank you. This is cran grape juice, guys. Come on. Yeah, so Bodhi's essentially saying here, if you see something, don't say something. Parents should be the only people looking out for their children, even when they're nowhere near their children, 7 hours a day, 35 hours a week because of school. And this goes perfectly in line with the hands-off approach that right-wingers have toward reducing gun violence in schools. Let our kids fend for themselves. Even if their classmate feels angry, brings a gun to school, and wants to kill themselves, maybe others. But thankfully, not everyone on the board here is a knucklehead about this subject. And 2 women speak up and make important points about how crucial community suicide prevention is.
I'm very proud of my kids' academic achievement, and that is absolutely imperative. But if they were dead, it really wouldn't matter how much reading, writing, or arithmetic they knew. So I think we need to look at what comes first to make sure that everything else can come after and that they can have a long and healthy and productive life.
We equipped our students to know and to identify when someone is struggling. We teach them to be kind. We teach them empathy. We teach them that mental illness isn't a stigma, that it's okay to not be okay. So I'm okay with taking a few minutes out of the day if it's going to save a life. And since this nonprofit started in 2016, countless lives have been saved because someone felt comfortable enough saying to their friend, I'm not okay, because someone felt comfortable enough to reach out to a staff member saying, I'm not okay.
The worst thing we can do for them is leave them isolated, only able to talk to their parents about their trauma. Not all parents are even there for their kids, people. Community support is how we get rid of the stigma against talking about dark thoughts and seeking help. Why is this so hard for right-wingers to acknowledge?